All right. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the latest episode of the Marlins Prospects Pod. My name is David Fernandez. I'm here today with Joe Frisaro from manon2nd.com. And we're bringing you a little early morning, well, not early morning, but morning Marlins talk here. We're going to get into some of the hottest prospects in the system. We're going to start with talking about Edward Cabrera's Marlins debut yesterday. And then we will touch on some of the other pitching prospects that we need to keep an eye on. And we'll sort of wrap things up with some of the hitters that have impressed us most recently. How you doing, Joe?
I'm doing great, David. And excited for this one. The Marlins are kind of at that point where some injuries are happening. Sometimes with some promotions are in order. So we're going to kind of look at how these prospects now, the ones that are kind of fit in the big league plan. So there's going to be some overlaps with Marlin talk as well as prospect talk. And as you noted yesterday, game one of a kind of frustrating doubleheader for the Marlins because of the way game two unfolded. But let's stick to game one for now. Edward Cabrera, as we noted, David, we've been pushing this guy for a while, obviously. His Marlins season debut. And 9 strikeouts, 6 innings, just complete dominance.
Yeah, he was awesome.
And the changeup was what really was kind of what really stood out. And he averaged, David, keep in mind, he averaged on that pitch 93.6 miles an hour. One changeup was 95.5 miles an hour, obviously rounds up to 96, which according to StatCast, which came about in 2015, is it was the fastest changeup on a swing and miss ever recorded by StatCast. So here, Edward, we were worried about his velo because in his last AAA start, the Scranton Wilkes-Barre announcers are saying he's throwing 92, 93 with his four-seamer, and he touched 97. They acted like that was an anomaly, and here he is. His fastball hit 99 yesterday. Changeup, real separator yesterday.
Yeah, there must have been something wrong with that Scranton radar the other day because it doesn't make any sense that, he goes from 92, to upper 90s. I mean, he was frustrating hitters all day. This one was probably my favorite.
Here it comes. And there it was. Strikeout number 8 for Cabrera.
I mean, you just see the utter frustration. The Rockies hitters, they didn't know how to deal with it. I mean, sometimes you see some of that stuff, with new pitchers that, they get promoted and there isn't, much of a scouting report on them. So, sometimes hitters will be frustrated at first, but then eventually adjust. The Rockies, they never really got to him. I mean, CJ Cron broke up the no-hitter in the 6th inning, I think it was. And I mean, but he was just great all night. And I mean, he did have, what was it? It was 3 walks, 4 walks.
Yeah, something like that. And
then
a couple of hit batters.
He hit a couple guys. So, I mean, there were some control concerns, which is the thing that will really sort of maybe hurt him if he doesn't clean that up. But as long as he's consistent in the zone and then expands out, then he's in business, right? Because the minute he sort of attacks these hitters and forces them to start chasing things, then he's going to get it rolling.
Oh, no question. And the thing about Eddie, like you said, in the highlight clip is great because whenever you get the bat smash, that's kind of the show that you won. When you bring out that frustration. I want to read a quote from Brendan Rodgers, who obviously was the hero in game 2 for Colorado. Rodgers, Florida kid as well. But this is what he said after the game in the MLB.com story. He had some electric stuff, meaning Eddie Cabrera, and he's throwing 95-mile-an-hour changeups. He goes, maybe some guys like Jacob deGrom and maybe 2 or 3 others have stuff like that. That's pretty high praise from Brendan Rodgers. 21 swings on the changeup, 10 whiffs, meaning swings and misses. And just like you said, it's what I really like. Yes, and I know the walks were a little problematic. The hit batter, you don't like to see those. I just think his stuff was so electric and it was moving so much. It was more of that than just, wild, if not, because he was in the zone. But, man, that ball, especially the arm side running in on a right-handed batter, I think he could fix that a little bit, probably the altitude, the grip of the baseball. In Colorado is a little bit of an issue as well. But overall, I love the mound presence. I love the determination. He looked like Sandy to me, and if he follows that path, now we're not expecting, near, no hit type stuff every game. But this is the Edward Cabrera I saw a little bit of in spring training. We've seen glimpses of this Edward Cabrera. He's dealt with the injuries. I'll give the Marlins the benefit of the doubt on his readiness because they know his preparation more than anybody in the media will pretend we know. They know how he feels between starts. They know how he's, building up. But that is some weapon, and this is why we were wanting to see him. And when we were talking about maximizing your inventory, why we wanted Edward Cabrera up here earlier. And I tell you, David, I think that no-hitter could have gone if the long innings between them. I think the Marlins offense, while I'm sure he didn't mind the run support, just the long waiting, because those were some fast outs. He made Charlie Blackmon look really frustrated. Like you said, the slider was really good. We are not even talking about that. 18 sliders. They're counting 7 curveballs. So, maybe that's a little hybrid. I'm not sure if he's throwing a pure, curveball. Right. A lot of times Statcast has a hard time reading that. Sometimes the curveball is really a slider. A guy calls it, but the fastball velocity, which obviously, and that really kind of makes me mad that the Scranton Wilkes-Barre announcers really underplayed that. They did. Because I'm gonna report what I hear and such, and he didn't. Edward didn't look super sharp in that game either. But come on, announcers, know who he was. They act like they had no idea who the guy was. It's not like he was a stiff. This is a real prospect. So when you're at the mercy of them, we want to get our information right. But when I saw him touching 98, I think it was, with an elevated fastball on Charlie Blackmon in the first inning, I'm like, there's life on the fastball. There's movement, late movement. Just the delivery flows real nice. Like I said, I thought I was watching, Sandy in terms of how the ball looked out of his hand. And when you get your changeup looking like a sinker, or a 4 or 2-seamer as they call it. But let's give a little perspective, David, on what a 95.5 mile an hour changeup and an average 93.6 miles an hour on 35 changeups. Sandy Alcantara's 4-seam fastball average is 97.7. His changeup average is 91.8, and that's ridiculous. Yeah. Pablo, who has the best changeup maybe among all starters in the baseball, Pablo's 4-seam average is 92.9. So Eddie's changeup average higher than Pablo's 4-seamer, and Pablo's changeup 87.4. So you don't need a 95, 96 mile an hour changeup to be good, but that was some special stuff. It was really fun to watch.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you were saying about the movement and the way the pitches kind of had so much life to them. You don't see that a ton in Colorado, which is impressive. Something that you worry about. A guy making his first start of the season up there, but it helped that he had Fortes behind the plate, who had been catching him off and on in Jacksonville. So there was some familiarity there between, the pitcher and the catcher. But just what he did yesterday really sort of justifies the calls for him to come up earlier. Right. And I know that the Marlins were being cautious. He had I think it was the bicep fatigue is what they were calling it at the beginning. So they kind of slowly moved him through spring training and through the minors and things like that. But I really think based on that performance, he has staked a claim to be in the rotation. Obviously, we're hoping that he gets another turn. But if you look at the state of the Marlins rotation right now, not only is Trevor Rodgers struggling, but Luzardo's on the IL and Cody Poteet recently landed on the IL. Hernandez has been up and down at best, down more often than up. So, you look at a guy like Cabrera and you're assuming that he can take one of those spots in the rotation. And if he pitches even remotely like this, he looks like the third best starter on the staff right now, because Rodgers isn't what he was a year ago. And we've seen Hernandez struggle. And then behind them, I mean, Luzardo had his moments, but we got to see what he looks like when he comes back from his injury. Max Meyer is still working back from his injury. So he's not even on the 40-man yet. So Cabrera is the guy that you're assuming is going to stay in this rotation moving forward. I would be really, really surprised if this was a spot start and that he gets returned to Jacksonville.
Oh, I totally agree. And yes, they lined him up in Luzardo's spot anyway. Yeah. And Luzardo, keep in mind, hasn't picked up a baseball since May 10th.
Yeah.
Unless he did in between last injury updates, which Donnie provides, which the first game of every series. We'll find out more, I guess, tonight when they talk again. But exactly right. And I'm going to raise a couple of points because I think you made some really interesting points. And to me, I think baseball has gotten to the point where the way they analytically and front office protectively puts wraps on these players to the point that they suffocate them. Edward Cabrera is 24 years old. He was big league ready at least 2 years ago in 2020. Mm-hmm. They babied him. Now, granted, he's had injuries or whatever is setting him back. But we don't need to keep telling everyone, oh, you can't pitch in Colorado. Oh, it's Colorado. You can't. Yeah. Guess what? Colorado's a big league stadium. You need to win a game in Colorado. That's where they play. You can't just say, I'm going to play, only in climate-controlled Lone Depot Park every 7 days, so I'm fully rested. I have good sleep. My stomach's not bothering me. I'm tired of that nonsense. This is the big leagues. You don't see the Dodgers sitting around going, oh, you know what? Oh, maybe Kershaw will pitch if it's 75 degrees with no humidity. And, this is what you got to do. Suck it up, play. And secondly, you saw the look in Edwards' eyes. Some guys are big league ready, get to the big leagues, pitch in the big leagues, because some guys get really bored in the minor leagues. Oh, I struck out 10 again in the minor leagues, and development front offices have to see who's ready for it. What are you going to do? Like if you have Fernando Tatis, he's only 20 years old. Let's keep him down. Yeah. The kid wants the stage, let him see, especially when your alternatives are not that much better or better at all based on ability. And if you were going to go for it, like we were told, April could have worked. He wasn't ready coming out of spring training. Well, when I saw him pitch in West Palm, he was making hitters look stupid. Yeah. He's not built up. Well, no one was really built up. You could always say an excuse. You could always say something to keep a guy down. You could overdevelop. And this, absolutely. And that doesn't mean if Edward goes out next game and gives up 5 runs and 2 1/3 and he's pulled that was, see, I told you so. No, you let him ride it out. It's like That's what prospects do. And it's not even prospects. I'm tired of hearing we're not going to develop at the big leagues this year with the Marlins. Guess what? Everyone's developing at the big leagues. Mike Trout's getting better developing in the big leagues. Shohei Ohtani's developing in the big leagues. Jesus Sanchez, everyone wanted him down a week ago, is hitting 500-foot homers almost out of a triple deck stadium. Yeah. And then he goes deep again. And that doesn't mean it's like guys are allowed to have ups and downs. They had a good first month, the Marlins, terrible May. We're going to see what June brings. It's not about the moment. It's not about, he did well, so he stays, or he had 0 for 4, he goes down. Let Edward pitch in the big leagues and let's see what you got, because he's better than what you have. And guess what? If you got to scale back his innings later in the year, if you fall completely out of it, there's plenty of ways to manage those innings. But that kid looked like he was ready for the moment in a tough environment, and he dominated that lineup.
Yeah, I mean, again, what he did was really impressive, and I'm with you 100%. And I think his makeup, I see a very similar makeup in a guy like Max Meyer, who seems to be ready, even though he had some struggles. Obviously, we're going to need to see what he looks like when he returns from his most recent injury. He was scheduled to start throwing last week, May 26th. Hopefully we get an update later today. Jacksonville's out of town. They're on the road. They're in Norfolk this week. So I haven't had a chance to get over there for that. But, he has a very similar makeup. He's going to be a guy that wants the ball and wants to be on the mound. And, the Marlins are getting to the point, if they don't start stringing some of these wins together, which is part of why yesterday game 2 was so frustrating. They had an opportunity to sweep that doubleheader. If they don't start stringing wins together, we're going to have to see some of these guys get sort of the finishing part of their development at the major league level. Guys like Max Meyer, guys like Lewin Diaz, who has a team-leading 10 homers and team-leading 41 RBI for Jacksonville. I mean, there's a handful of guys in that AAA club that, they've almost reached the ceiling of their development in the minor leagues. I mean, you've talked in the past about plate appearances at the minor league level. I mean, Lewin Diaz has, literally, I think it's like 2,000 some odd,
Yeah, he has 2,148 at bats. I wrote that down.
Yeah. So
93 triple home runs in the minors. Let's get him to 100. Yeah, maybe he could be the all-time home run leader in the minors.
Yeah, I mean, guys like that, they have to make the transition at some point. So we'll see how the Marlins kind of handle their roster moving forward. And I mean, now that Cabrera's up and they've got a handful of guys that are still, that were probably near the majors that were, I mean, a couple of them are on the 40-man. They're dealing with some injuries. Jordan Holloway's still working his way back. He's on the 40-man. Max Meyer isn't on the 40-man, but he's working his way back as well. Sixto Sanchez is another one that I think it's from 105 feet that he's throwing, like dry mound work. So he's getting closer and closer to making what will likely be a minor league debut at some point, hopefully in the summer. But another guy that recently came back from an injury turn who is on the 40-man roster is Braxton Garrett. And he was really impressive in his last outing for Jacksonville. He went 5 innings. He only gave up 1 hit. He had 3 strikeouts, didn't give up an earned run. With Jacksonville this season, he's 2-1 in his 5 starts. He's got a 3.12 ERA. He's got a 1.0 whip. He's thrown 26 innings. He's got 21 strikeouts, only 7 walks. Batting average against is just 200 for Braxton Garrett. He's a guy that we've seen with the Marlins before. And if these injury issues continue at the major league level, then he might be the very next one called up to fill a hole in the rotation. And I've got some highlights here from his most recent start, and it looks like he's getting close to ready for the Marlins.
The 0-2 to Florial, swing and a miss. Straight up, they shift the infield towards third. 3-2, swing and a miss. You see a run or two back as quickly as possible.
Not going to happen here. Swing and a miss. Went to the slider that time to get him down.
The slider has been his best pitch. He's got a 28% whiff rate on that slider, so 28% swings and misses. It's a good sweeping slider for Braxton Garrett. He's also got a fastball that's in the low 90s, a sinker in the low 90s. That slider goes through at about 84. He's still developing his changeup and his curveball, but Garrett, if they need to fill another hole in the rotation, and again, it's possible considering Luzardo hasn't started throwing yet, and Poteet's on the 15-day IL, he might be the next one that they call up.
Yeah, and just watching Braxton, following his career, and I know he had the really good curveball coming out of high school in that draft. So it's interesting they're kind of making that slider. They kind of advanced that curveball into more of that sweeping slider, as you showed. Yeah. I see him, to be honest, David. I see him as a candidate that I would pair up with Eliezer and do that kind of especially now you're allowed to carry 14 pitchers through the end of June. That you could kind of look for the piggyback, if you want Eliezer still there, if you want Garrett to start, you could go through it. I don't see Brax as necessarily a 5-6 inning big league. I see him kind of a lefty version of, maybe a little more upside than Eliezer, but in terms of where he is now and how he can help the big club, he would definitely be someone I would consider to has that kind of the Poteet, role, whether you wanted him to start, and go a few innings and then maybe Eliezer in that long role. But I could see pairing him with Eliezer into some capacity. Cabrera stays where Luzardo is. And you hope that Jesus gets better as soon as you can, but that's a forearm issue. You've got to be really careful with Luzardo, because at some point, if Edward hits a little hiccup, you want Luzardo obviously healthy. But, Garrett, I could see him in a multiple of roles, whether it's that, like I said, that opener, that 3-inning starter, or that 3-inning reliever to piggyback Eliezer. What you saw there, that's big league stuff. That's a big league breaking ball that could get left-handed hitters out. So that's a valuable guy. I just see him as more of a 1-2 times through the rotation, not really a 3. He's got to prove that over time. But in terms of if you wanted to use your inventory to help win games before the July deadline, as long as he's healthy and you got him at a pitch count where you're comfortable, I could get him up here in whatever role that is. I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I feel like there's a little overlap between Garrett and Castano. I think Garrett has a higher upside than Castano, but we've seen Castano kind of go. They've shuttled him back and forth between Jacksonville and Miami, filling innings, eating innings here and there. They opted to hold on to Castano on the 40-man, and they DFA'd Joe Dunan last week. In order to make room for, I think it was. When they had to, Evisel Garcia landed on the COVID IL for a second, and so they needed, they needed to shuffle the roster, and they ended up losing Dunan to the Braves. I don't know that that's really a big deal beyond the fact that he's a local kid, so you hate to see a guy like that go. But you look at the way that the roster is built at this point. I think if they do opt to go with Garrett, it's Castano who kind of gets squeezed off the roster at that point because of, sort of the similarity in their skill set.
But Garrett's on the 40-man.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. Just double check that. But it's so I don't think you had a risk, and I wouldn't want to lose Castano. That's the right call. You need Garrett's on the 40-man. You need that pitching depth. And, we're now in our first few days of June, and, what if Trevor's, not healthy? What's going on there? Obviously, Luzardo, we don't know the short or long term of it. Sixto, but a guy like Sixto now, he's on the 60 day, if that goes in, that would affect if he's ready. But those are more down the line. But I tell you a guy who I wouldn't mess around with this year, who I'm perfectly happy keeping at AA as long as possible. He pitched yesterday, not his greatest outing, but Yuri Perez, 19 years old, continues to be someone to watch. But I got him. When I see Yuri and I see Edward and I see, versions of Sandy, kind of the long, lean body type with the, man, that's going to be fun when those three are there together. But Yuri Perez, 3.79, I think, ERA for the year. 38 innings pitched, 56 Ks. The kid, he's just a real special talent. 97 mile an hour fastball and 92 mile an hour changeup. And your thoughts on Yuri?
Yeah, I mean, 19 years old. He's a phenom at this point, right? He's pitched so well. He was the Southern League pitcher of the week last week, following his 6-inning outing where he only gave up 3 hits and he had 5 strikeouts. Wasn't great the other night, but still, he's got a sub-1 whip, which is something that you love to see with the starting pitcher. He was pulled early yesterday. He only went 4 innings yesterday. He gave up a couple homers. He did have 6 strikeouts. He only threw 63 pitches, though. But from what I've heard, it wasn't injury related. So it might have been maybe a scheduled short outing, or maybe he was on a pitch count for one reason or another. But he only went 4 innings yesterday. He did give up a couple homers, but again, he got 6 strikeouts, and he's just been impressive, sort of throughout the season. Yeah, and at 19 years old, you don't want to see him sort of move up the ladder too quickly. And I mean, maybe he gets a turn or two in Jacksonville at the end of the year at the AAA level. But right now, he's in good shape. There at AA. The guy that I was thinking of with my 40-man sort of confusion is actually a teammate of Yuri Perez's, and that's Zach Mccambley. He's a guy that is also pitching at the AA level. He's the number 15 prospect, according to MLB.com, for the Marlins. But he's 23 years old. So he's much closer to helping the big club than Yuri Perez is at this point, who's 19. But he's a guy that should Garrett get sort of moved up to the Marlins roster, Mccambley could be a guy that we see transition from Pensacola to Jacksonville. And then, who knows at that point, maybe he does get a turn or two late in the year. He's a guy that the Marlins drafted in the 3rd round in 2020. And he had arguably the best curveball in that 2020 draft. It had great depth, some major movement. But the issue for Mccambley this year has been with location. He's kind of been up and down as a starter. His first 4 starts were not great this season. He had a 9.35 ERA. through those first 4 starts, he gave up 21 runs, but his last 3 starts, he's been really, really impressive. He's gone 2-1 with an 0.53 ERA. He's only given up 1 earned run over his last 17 innings pitched. He's got 20 strikeouts. So he's a guy that, he's not on the 40-man roster. And again, he was the one that I was thinking of that might squeeze Castano off. But if Garrett moves up and then they need another starter at Jacksonville, the AAA level, it kind of makes sense that he gets that promotion.
Yeah, and Zach Mccambley, we're big fans. Coastal Carolina, he was a guest on the Man on Second podcast in January, and really good kid, really, really heady, smart, type of approach. Not dominant though, meaning, that fastball 92, 94, note the curveball really good. I like the 35 Ks and 34 in the third innings. I see him as a little bit of a hybrid as well, a guy who can start, a guy who could relieve. Some people think it's that reliever profile, but I think he could, you're absolutely right. He's a guy who could move up to AAA and find himself in the second half of the year in the big leagues, if all goes well. But he could be, if you got a good breaking ball, you're going to get big league hitters out. Obviously, you need some sort of fastball to keep them off your breaking ball. But, just look at the league averages on sliders, curveballs. It's not great. And if you got a plus breaking ball, you got to roll. And, maybe that does set up, if you feel like a Castano, the Marlins still can make trades, because the guy has value. And then I'm not quitting on Daniel Castano because I think we're getting to the point where you're going to have to protect as much of the pitching inventory as possible just because of the attrition that happens. But he does give that flexibility. Certainly, if Garrett comes to the big leagues, it's going to create another rotation spot. And Zach is clearly someone to keep an eye on, as the season progresses.
It'll be interesting to see. I mean, he's got the fastball and he's got the great breaking ball, that great curveball. It'll be interesting to see if he never really sort of fully develops the changeup, which is what he's working on right now. If that never sort of gets to the point where they feel comfortable with it, maybe he transitions to the bullpen and he becomes one of those high leverage guys because, if he's got a swing and miss breaking ball like that, if he improves on the command, maybe he's a guy that down the line helps them in the back end of the bullpen, because we know that they've had issues with the back end of the bullpen, particularly recently. I mean, we saw it last night, but I mean, they've really sort of struggled to find an answer back there. And who knows? Maybe he's one of those guys.
Yeah, I don't know whether his max fastball, I think I saw 96 or something like that. Yeah. So maybe in a 1 inning thing, his velo would play up, pitching 1 inning. But obviously, Mccambley is someone to keep an eye on. A few position players before we wrap this up. We saw, in the second game, Garrett Cooper come out of the Marlins lineup, deal with a little bit of a tightness in his intercostal, near the rib there. If Coop, as soon as that happened, almost simultaneously, I go over to the Jacksonville box score, and Lewin Diaz is out of the game. So I wonder if Lewin's on his way to Miami, as insurance, if Cooper is to be, down for a little bit, or insurance. But if they do need to make a move, I hope they play it smart. Obviously, we hope Coop's okay. But, they were also saying Joey Wendell's hamstring wasn't a big deal. And now he's on they're going to nip that in the bud. And now he's on the IL again for the second time with the hammy. So Lewin, we got to keep an eye on. We talked about him. He's more than ready. 247 this year, 797 OPS 10 bombs, as you said. We know about him, but I wanted to ask you because, we saw the injuries. Now Wendell's on the IL. Brian Anderson's on the IL. They brought in Luke Williams, like the speed, like the hair, he kind of had it going on yesterday. But, I think it's time to keep a little bit of an eye on Jose Devers, who's a 40-man roster guy who could find his spot in the roster a little bit in trouble. He's in Double-A right now, just 26 ABs because he's coming off injury. But Jose Devers is a guy who could fit into the equation for a promotion.
Yeah, I mean, Devers, he was out for a long time with that shoulder impingement injury, which is actually the same injury that Braxton Garrett was dealing with. But he's been off to a slow start, only 5 games here at the Double-A level with Pensacola, hitting 150, 182 on base. It's obviously he's working his way back into game shape, but he is on the 40-man, so you think that maybe he fills that role. It'll be interesting to see what they do sort of moving forward. I mean, Luke Williams is a super utility guy, cut from a very similar mold as John Birdie. So, he's a guy that when he played with Philadelphia in 2021, he literally played every position in the field other than catcher and pitcher. So they can kind of plug and play him. I mean, he could pick up first base if Garrett Cooper's down for, an extended period of time, if they opt not to call up Lewin. I mean, Mattingly, I guess he kind of downplayed Cooper's injury yesterday, saying that Cooper felt fine, that he could have kept going, but they were cautious with him. Another guy, though, that they could call up to play first base if they need to was just named their minor leaguer of the month, Gerard Encarnacion. He is on the 40-man roster. Normally a corner outfielder. He's a guy that probably profiles best as a DH, but they have played him at first base throughout his minor league career. Played a lot of first base last season at the AA level. He could get some turns at first base here in AAA in Jacksonville if they do call up Lewin, but they could call up Encarnacion if these infield issues continue to sort of plague them, these injury issues, and they need Luke Williams to play somewhere else. I mean, that's kind of where you look at the way that they manage the roster, and Williams maybe has a little bit more positional versatility than Joe Dunan, which is maybe why they opted to make that trade instead of keeping Dunan. So they're still kind of, I guess, moving some of these pieces around the board to sort of figure out what they have.
Yeah, and I think everyone knows my opinion on Gerard Encarnacion. I like to see him, though. I have no problem with him staying at AAA, getting as much ABs as possible, then being used sporadically in the big leagues, even though obviously the power is immense. But here's a guy who we've talked about was, he's that age group that really was hurt by the pandemic and losing the 2020 season. And then yes, they brought it back in 2021, but it was a shorter minor league year. So let him get those reps. Yes, if he is completely raking and all signs are pointing, but I think I want him in my lineup pretty much 5 to 7 days a week rather than 1 to 2 or matchup. I'd rather go with a guy like Williams, who the guy's been in the big leagues. And you're right. He did bring some energy, but I do think he puts Jose Devers' situation into the spotlight. If you're looking for 40-man, situations and Jose's dealt with that kind of shoulder arm on his throwing arm. He's not the biggest guy in the world. Yes, he's gaining some weight, but he's not 18 anymore. He's 22. So it just determines, are they running out of time for Devers? Because he, to me, would be someone, especially if Andy's going to be gone for a while, that you're going to need to bring up. But what's Devers? He's a utility guy. Yes, lefty bat, but not a lot of power. Williams, I don't think, is bringing a lot of power, but you just kind of ride that and go with the speed guy. I'd probably stay with Williams if I'm looking to the best chance to win right now in the month of June. I probably think he's probably a better alternative.
Yeah, absolutely. If they do start shuffling these guys around, I guess to wrap up here today, the only other prospect that I wanted to mention, I wanted to give some love to Mr. Marlins' little boy, Griffin Conan. He's been doing really, really well at the AA level. So if the Marlins opt to bring up Lewin instead of Gerard, and maybe Gerard sort of slides over to first base, it may create a spot in the outfield where they promote Griffin Conan, because Conan, as you said, he's in that age group where you're starting to see it's time for these guys to progress as quickly as they can, even though they lost that year with the pandemic. 24 years old. In the month of May, he hit .313. He had a 1.046 OPS. He had 5 homers, 19 RBI. He is currently riding a 21-game on-base streak. And his production in May has jumped in terms of what it was in April. In April, he hit .250. He had a 683 OPS. The big fear with Conan is obviously the K rate. For the season, his K rate is above 30. In April, his K rate was 38.5. He brought it down to 35.5 in May. During this on-base streak, during this 21-game streak, though, he's brought it down a little bit further. He's got it to 30.6% of the time. So, he's a guy that maybe gets or probably should get moved up to the AAA level at this point, but he's really settled in at the AA level, and he did this the other day.
2-0. Swinging a high fly into right. Harris lost it. Now he finds it, but it's too late. That one's out of here. Over the fence, over the hill, Kelly Hill, and out of the ballpark. A 2-run blast for Griffin Conan.
He literally left the ballpark the other day. So he's got some great power, and obviously a homegrown guy, played at Pinecrest High School in Fort Lauderdale, son of Mr. Marlin, Jeff Conan. So he's somebody who's really been impressing of late.
Yeah, a 421 BABIP. I mean, like I said, 300 is like a good number there. 421. So obviously, put the bat in the ball, Griffin. Just find a way, because there is some serious thunder in that bat. So fun to watch. Especially local. Maybe we lost Dunan. Maybe we get a Conine. Kind of making his way up to keep a South Florida prospect in the wings. But good points on Griffin, especially if Lewin's up for a bit to kind of do. But man, it would be an interesting Burdick, Conine, Blade outfield. Yeah. I got some, kind of some win the all body contest, if nothing else. So congrats to Griffin. Again, keep that K rate down, keep that BABIP up, and David, I think we knocked this one out of the park, like as we always do. Always appreciate your great work. Tell everyone how to find us, and we'll be back. Just scheduling. We'll be back Wednesdays. We just had a little scheduling conflict, so we had to do it today, Thursday. But we're going to bring these to you every week. These prospects.
Yeah, absolutely. Normally on Wednesdays, we didn't go yesterday. It was my daughter. She just graduated from 8th grade, so we had a little celebration instead. Sorry about that. But you can obviously subscribe to the 5 Reasons YouTube channel. You'll get great content, all South Florida sports. Yeah, if you see the scrolling banner down there at the bottom, check out dugoutmugs.com/man-on-2nd to get your hands on one of these awesome dugout mugs, and it'll help us out along the way, of course. And if there's anybody that you would like us to talk about in our next episode, you can comment here on the video stream. You could tag us on social media. You can reach out on Twitter. I'm at by DL Fernandez. Joe is at Joe Frisaro or at man-on-2nd. Either one of those works for him. And we'll continue to keep a close eye on the Marlins prospects to see who's next in line to help the team. And we'll be here next week. Thanks for watching, everybody.